please have patience with us as we continue to navigate some of the technological. Oh, here we go. We have Commissioner Watchman who just joined us. Commissioner Watchman, if you can unmute yourself, but we do see you.
Thank you. Good morning. Sorry for being late.
That's okay. We're glad that you're here. And with that, I am going to call the meeting to order. We will go right to item 1A, which is the call for quorum. It is 9:04 on Tuesday, February 2nd. I call this meeting of the Independent Redistricting Commission to order. For the record, the Administrative Assistant, Yasmin Ramos, with the Arizona Department of Administration will be taking roll call and minutes today. When your name, commissioners, are called, please indicate that you are present. If you're unable to respond verbally through the technology, we ask that you please type your name. Yasmin.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I will be taking roll call now. Erica Newberg.
Present.
Derek Watchman.
Present.
David Meal.
Present.
Shireen Lerner.
Present.
Douglas York.
Present.
For the record, it looks like we have a quorum. Everyone is present. And also, I wanted to bring to everyone's attention that we also have Pamela Linnings, Kyle Cummings, and Caroline Guerrero from the Attorney General's office. We also have Angela Miller, who will be transcribing for the commission. And also, we also have ADOA staff who will be introduced at a later time when they are ready to present. And I will turn it back to you, Chairwoman.
Okay, thank you, Yasmin. And with that, we'll go to 1B, call for notice. Yasmin, was the meeting and agenda for the commission meeting properly posted 48 hours in advance of today's meeting?
Yes, it was posted on Thursday, 9 a.m.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to item 2, we have the approval of minutes for January 21st, 2021, the public meeting portion. And as we discuss this, I just want to note that for statutory requirements, a video recording of the meeting suffices for minutes that we are obligated to produce. And so in essence, when we vote to approve minutes, we ought to be thinking, did we fulfill our obligation to reflect adequately what transpired? Okay, so the public session minutes, the recording you have had with the public comments attached. Is there any discussion regarding the public minutes regarding January 21st? No discussion. Do I have a motion regarding the public session to approve the minutes of January 21st, 2021?
I motion, Chairwoman.
Who is that?
Commissioner Watchman moves to approve the minutes.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Commissioner Neal seconds.
Okay, Commissioner Meal seconds. We will do a quick roll call for votes. Vice Chair Watchman.
Yes.
Commissioner Meal.
Yes.
Commissioner Lerner.
Yes.
Commissioner York.
Aye. Yes.
The minutes have been approved. At this point, I'm going to turn the agenda over to Vice Chair Watchman to discuss the executive session minutes. I was not present.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Let's discuss the executive session. Is there any discussion on the executive session minutes for January 21st, 2021? And I believe that was sent to us last week as well.
I move that we approve the executive session minutes.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Mill to approve the January 21st, 2021 21 executive session recorded meeting minutes. Is there a second?
This is Commissioner Lerner, seconds.
Commissioner Lerner seconds. Any discussion regarding the motion or the minutes? There being none, let's vote. All those, can we have a roll call, Yasmin?
Yes, Derek Watchman,
Yes.
David Meal,
Yes.
Shireen Lerner,
Aye.
Douglas York.
Aye.
It looks like the motion is carried.
With a vote of 4 in favor, 0 opposed, the meeting minutes are approved. So thank you, and I'll turn the gavel back over to our chairwoman. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Watchman. We'll move on to agenda item 3, which is just a very brief update to the commissioners and the broader public. There has been a pretty significant delay of the census data, and the census data is a necessary piece of information for the actual mapping work to commence. And so this is really just to inform everybody that at the earliest, we can expect some basic information at the end of April. It's possible, though, that they're not going to release partial pieces of information, but will rather present it all at one time, which means that that information may not be available till the end of July. The media doesn't have any more information about that. The delays have a lot to do with COVID. And so as we move through the agenda and we think through our schedules, I just encourage us all to be aware of those implications. With that, I'm going to move on to item 4, which is discussion and possible action for time, place, and manner of meetings. With that, this is our opportunity to really talk through the frequency of meetings, the style of meetings, virtual and person, the location of meetings, and I open it up to discussion.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Watchman would like to speak.
Yes, please.
I guess a few things. One, I was appointed to represent the indigenous communities of the state, and I'm from Northern Arizona, and so I know our state is large and vast, and so it'd be nice at some point when we get past COVID to be able to get out and have hearings across the state and around the state, to visit our wonderful communities. But between now and then, it's a challenge, but I think having virtual meetings between now and then would be important because last week we did get a call that potential exposure was possible. So that was a scare for me and my family. Given where I'm at up here on Navajo, we have a high rate of COVID cases, and so. But for me, making sure we get around the state, I think it's very, very important. I looked in the past, and the past commissions had, somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 plus meetings, which I think is important. And so, but we have to weigh that obviously with the pandemic. And so, but I for one, until I feel safe, think that we should start with virtual meetings. And then, I'm not sure what the point of changing that is, but we get out to the communities and visit all of our communities. I think it's very, very important. So, I don't really have any specified dates, but, we should probably get on a schedule where we do hearings weekly. And it's unfortunate that the census count is not going to be here until July or so. And so, but those are just some of my quick comments as, I'll listen to my fellow commissioners on other talking points. So, but thank you. Those are my initial thoughts.
Thank you, Commissioner Watchman, and relevant to what you said, it is interesting to note that the last commission began their public testimony mid-July and began their initial grid mapping and then soliciting feedback on that not till August. So we can keep that in context. Other feedback?
Chairwoman, I would just like to point out, I agree with Commissioner Watchman. But there are times where it's just better to be in a room together. And I think we'll have a few key decisions. One will be picking an executive director. One will be picking the consulting team, which will be lawyers and mapping firms. And I think we can do those virtual, but at some point it may be good to get in a room and talk. But once we start getting to the mapping issues, it's going to be hard to not be in a room where we're looking at big maps on display and things together. But that's obviously a ways down the road. But I do think there's enough estimated census data that once we pick the consulting team, we're going to probably want to start running some preliminary mapping well in advance of having the final census data, just to at least have a head start on all that.
Thank you.
Commissioner Newberg and
Yes.
fellow commissioners, this is Commissioner Lerner. I just have some little things. I'm fine with everything that's being said. I do think there are times when it is worth being together to have some of these discussions, but I also feel that whatever we can do virtually, we should. I'd just like to ask for us to maybe adjust our agendas for the future to include things like times. When do we begin? When are we planning to end? When are we opening up for public comment? Some basic things on agendas as we're moving forward, because for example, the public comment period, we don't say when it will begin, what time it begins, and it would be very helpful for members of the public to know that if they can't sit here for all the hours that we're here. And same thing with any of the items. While we may like a beginning and end time for our meetings for the future, it helps us in our planning. It helps others who are watching in their planning as well. So I'm in complete agreement with the previous two commissioners' comments that there are times we need to be together. There are also times when we can try to do things virtually, but maybe as we move forward on looking at how we organize our agenda, we can do that thinking about public involvement as well.
Absolutely, and there'll be further discussion on that in other agenda items. I would like to remind everybody that the agenda was published in advance, and an item 5 is opportunity for public comment. So we will open it, which is really the next item. But other comments?
Commissioner Newberg, this is Commissioner York. Just a quick comment. I kind of agree with the Commissioner Watchman. It would be nice to be in market at some point in the future. But also, I think we can do a lot of our busy work virtually. So somehow, if you come up with the cadence of a schedule, I like the weekly virtual touch-ins would be not a bad idea, given it's a set day and we can adjust our calendars accordingly. And so that's all the feedback.
Okay. Let me ask a question along the lines of virtual / person. Is there any discussion on whether or not we all need to follow the same guidelines? So for example, there's 3 people that live in Maricopa County, 2 much further away. Are there thoughts of having hybrid meetings, or is that discouraged? I'm curious what people's perspectives are on that.
I do know that if you have 3 people in one room and everybody else is virtual, the 3 people in the one room don't show on the screens that well. They actually show better individually. It's almost an awkward in between. So for that reason, I would prefer one or the other. But I'm not totally opposed to doing the hybrid, but the hybrid does have its own awkwardness.
Well, Madam
Any
Chair,
other-
this is Commissioner
Go
Watchman.
ahead, Commissioner Watchman.
Since I'm the furthest, I don't have a problem either way. I think meeting in person all together at the same time is good, and virtually as well. And so, but I have my own business, and so I'm free to travel anywhere, and so that's just the nature of my job, and so I will go with basically what I think it would be in the best interest of the commission, obviously, being together and having great discussions in the same room or on the same chat would be probably the best of both worlds. And so, but I just want to say, I'm routinely open. And so even though I'm the farthest, so I have no problem with having to travel. I do it on the spur of the moment most of the time. So thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner York.
Yeah, my comments regarding hybrid is, I think, given today's world and the advancement of virtual technology, at some point we will have a hybrid. I don't think it's a desirable initial meetings process, but the reality is that I'm guessing that'll happen at some point. So we should allow the public to understand that might be a case.
Thank you. We started a conversation on frequency. Commissioner York mentioned, particularly in these early months, while it sounds like it will probably lean more virtual, potentially weekly meetings while the hiring process is getting underway. Does that sound like a comfortable frequency for the commissioners?
This is Commissioner Lerner, and I tend to agree with that. I think I would like to see us put something on a schedule. I'm perfectly happy to do a weekly as well, because I think we will have plenty to talk about as we get organized and as we move forward. So if we could get that scheduled on a regular basis, that would be great. And virtual, I think, initially with all of this. I tend to agree with Commissioner Meal on it might be that, for example, when we're in the midst of hiring, we might want to come together. So there might be times when we do that, but for times the virtual format needs to work.
Okay, so at this point, what I'm hearing in terms of consensus is that we're wanting routine, we're wanting weekly, we want mostly a virtual model while COVID is still rampant and there's not full vaccination or protection. And that we can be flexible with a hybrid model, but with a strong preference of convening in person with sensitive issues like hiring and things like that. I believe we can discuss the specifics of a day. Well, actually, let me ask, does the commission want the same day and time every week to the extent possible?
From my perspective, commissioners, that I think that actually is helpful to us and helpful to the public as well, to know when we're going to be meeting on a regular basis.
I would be good with that.
I would agree.
I agree, Madam Chair. I think that's good policy.
All right. We can talk about the specific day and time when we calendar in our next meeting. But for now, if somebody would be willing to or is interested in presenting a motion summarizing our general strategy for our meetings going forward as it relates to frequency, virtual, hybrid, and with routine. Do I have a motion?
I'll go ahead and move. I'm looking at everybody's face. We're all looking at whoever's going to do it. I move that we develop a routine day of meeting, that we will be virtual for the foreseeable future, and also we will consider when we feel there is a need for it in person. I think that's it. And we will decide on the date and time at a later point in our agenda.
Do I have a second?
I second. Commissioner York.
Was there a desire to ask any questions regarding the legal requirements for meetings, or to get any legal advice on this?
Madam Chair, I'll entertain that thought. Obviously we have to follow the statute, and so if Pam has any input for us, I'm certainly open to that. I know we have a motion in a second, but maybe some additional legal input would be helpful for this discussion.
Pam?
And did you want to do that in executive session or in the open session?
I think open session at the moment is fine.
Yeah,
I assume as long as we do our public notices properly in advance each week, is there any reason we can't be meeting weekly?
Correct.
That's correct. So as long as everything is properly noticed, obviously, when you look at the calendar, you got to keep in mind it's the 48 hours. We're about to go into a government holiday drought, so there won't be a lot of holidays that are cropping up and eating your time. But if you're just if you're not setting something up at this time for a recurring meeting, then you'll be looking at having this discussion in an ongoing manner.
yeah. Pam, we have an item on the agenda, number 12, in which we're going to be discussing the specific schedule. And so I was just trying to follow the agenda as closely as possible. But all of this is, of course, a given that we will observe, the 48-hour notice rule for agendas. And moving forward, I think the agendas will likely be a little more consistent, routinized, as Commissioner Lerner mentioned. And so I think it's going to be a little bit more of a smoother flow. Anything else, Pam, to add on that?
None unless there are more questions for me.
I have a question, Madam Chair. If we're going to do routine meetings, say for the next few months, and given the 48-hour notice, is there a way to post a meeting notice that for the next couple of months, as an example, that we're going to follow, an outline so that I know the 48-hour notice is sometimes troubling, but can we get something out there for a 2-month time span? This is going to be the agenda. There's a lot of things that we have to do. That's going to be routine until we get to the nuts and bolts. So it's just a thought, so that we can avoid having to miss those 48-hour opportunities. So I guess that's a legal question. Can we post a generic agenda so that we can have our routine weekly meetings, and because we do need to talk about, obviously, oversight, administration, the rules, and training. So I'm just throwing that as a thought, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Watchman, are you asking Pam for legal advice?
Yeah, I'm asking Pam.
Okay,
Pam.
Pam.
Yes. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Thank you. So just to clarify, and again, if at any point anybody wants to move this into executive session for legal advice, we can. But to clarify, there's a difference between an agenda versus a notice. The notice itself can be posted as a regular schedule of meetings. The agenda is what's going to happen at each meeting. That has a time frame for posting as well. Once it's up and you get within that closed window for changing it, you're married to that agenda. And so if, let's say, there's a meeting scheduled for Friday morning and the notice has not been changed from the prior week, or I should say the agenda from the prior week, and that's your standard agenda, then you're stuck with the exact same items. So when you post your agenda, if there are times on it, you're potentially married to the times that are on there. If you have certain subjects on there, or parameters for those subjects, like they say discussion, but not discussion and action, that limits what you can and can't talk about. Although you do have the flexibility within the agenda, assuming it's been properly noticed, to move things up or down. But the substance is set within a certain time frame.
Any other questions, Commissioner Watchman?
No, I'm fine. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. So just to clarify, as we're discussing, the time, place, and manner of meetings, the frequency, it is with the commitment to fulfill all public notice responsibilities. Meetings, the agenda will be up 48 hours in advance. And as I mentioned earlier, and our next item will be discussing public comments. We want to be as transparent and accessible as possible. And I believe that the agenda will become, quite consistent over time as we get into the nitty-gritty of what we do. So thank you, Pam, for all of that, to make sure that we're thinking through our obligations to the public and the Constitution. Any other comments on this issue before we go back to the motion? And we may want to modify the motion or amend the motion to make sure that we capture the commitment for the public meetings notice.
I have no other comments on the motion, but I think it can move forward as it stands because it was fairly general on what we were planning on doing.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we'll have a quick roll call for vote. Vice Chair Watchman.
Aye.
Commissioner Meal.
Aye.
Commissioner Lerner.
Aye.
Commissioner York.
Aye.
Commissioner Newberg is a yes, and so the motion is carried. We are moving on now to item 5, opportunity for public comment. The public comment period will now officially be open at 9:31 a.m. For a period of 30 minutes and will end at 10:01. Comments will only be accepted electronically in writing on the link provided in the notice and the agenda for this public meeting, and comments will be limited to 3,000 characters. On to item number 6, which is discussion and possible action on handling public comments. And as we begin to have discussion about this, I'd like to frame it by stating public comment is not required, but may be taken. And I think as we think about this, up to now, the majority of comments that we've received from the public has to do with wanting more accessibility and transparency. This process is filled with tension. And I think to the extent that we can be as transparent and open and as responsive to the concerns and needs of our citizens, I think that we will be very well served. And as again, we move into this conversation, I want to remind us all, as already stated, members of the commission may not discuss items that are not specifically identified on the agenda. Therefore, pursuant to ARS 38-431, action taken as a result of public comment will be limited to directing staff to study the matter, responding to any criticism, or scheduling the matter for further consideration and decision at a later date. Does anybody have any discussion regarding a standard practice for public comments going forward, such as method, time, place, manner, and how we address it moving forward?
Commissioners, if I could make the suggestion, I guess a follow-up, I added this at the incorrect place earlier. I'd like to suggest that we, first of all, include in our agendas, just as we're trying to standardize our meetings, standardize when we will be allowing for public comment on our agendas, so people will know if it's at 9:30 or whatever the time is that we decide. And then I would also suggest that perhaps we add an agenda item each, and I'm not sure if maybe this is the wrong place for this to add an agenda item each week to allow us to discuss, if needed, any previous public comments, because from the previous week. So we would always be 1 week behind, so to speak, but at least it would give us time to review the public comments. And at that point, then we could bring up anything in the public comments that we feel we needed to discuss so we can address those. So those would be my 2 suggestions.
Thank you, Commissioner Lerner. Other discussion?
I would be fine with what Commissioner Lerner suggested.
Thank you, Commissioner Meal. Other comments? As of now, the method has been where comments are to be submitted electronically with a maximum of 3,000 characters. Just to give you a context of what this means, we started our first meeting, had hundreds of comments. The last meeting had dozens. And so, you know, this seems to be an effective method right now for us to be able to tap into a wide array of feedback in a method that's consumable for us. And it's something potentially down the road when we have more substantive material to share as it relates to the data, you know, we can change this up. But for now, I'm hearing general consensus that we're wanting a standard time in the schedule, that the method that we're taking comments is working, and that even though we'd be 1 week behind, we can schedule in a regular agenda item to address the comments that we're hearing. I have one comment and something to look at a little more in depth, Commissioner Lerner. You mentioned a standard time for the public comments. There's one challenging part of that requires us to literally interrupt a flow. And so to have it at the exact same time every single week would require us to, you know, which I'm kind of doing, set an alarm, stop the process, you know, and you know, which is, if we think that the broader public would prefer that and that works better for us, I'm amenable. Do we want more flexibility? Open to conversation.
Well, Commissioners, it may not have to be 9:30 a.m. It perhaps could be that it is always going to be immediately after approval of minutes, so that people of the public could always know that it's at the very beginning of a meeting, rather than in the middle or at the end. I'd be completely fine. I guess that's more of what I'm thinking, is something so that if I'm a member of the public and I want to, and I've done this, right? We've all probably done this where we go to a city council meeting or something, we want to put in comments. We know that those comments come at item 3 or item 5. So we know how to plan our day, so to speak. So that's all I'm asking. So perhaps we put the comments after approval of minutes. We open them up before we get into the other business that we have. Then they're open for the 30-minute period. And then we move on from there. Maybe that's better than a particular time.
Any other comment? Okay, so it sounds like consensus with, you know, a specific order in the agenda. The method we're using is satisfying the need, and that we will have a regular agenda item to go through the comments and address them. Do I have a motion in support of this?
Also move.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll
Second.
second.
Any further discussion on the motion? We'll move
No.
to a vote call. Vice Chair Watchman,
Aye.
Commissioner Meal,
Aye.
Commissioner Lerner,
Aye.
Commissioner York,
Aye.
and I am a yeah, and aye. The motion is carried. We're moving on to item 7, which is the presentation, discussion, and possible action on services provided by the Arizona Department of Administrations. We'll be hearing from Human Resources, Facilities, Information Technology, Procurement, and Finance. And so I turn it over now to ADOA.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. This is Andy Tobin at ADOA. I'm glad you're all doing well. It's nice to have you here again. As you were aware, we put together some short briefings with my executive staff to kind of give you a heads up on how we can be helpful. And I wanted to share this. It's comprehensive, but it's squeezed down. I know you have a busy agenda, so we're happy to take questions when we're done. But I don't have the agenda in front of me, so I'm not exactly sure who you have going first. So I thought it was Emily Rajakovic with Human Services, but is that fair, Emily?
Good morning. Happy to be up first.
Great. So we're very lucky to have Emily. I'll introduce her, and then what I'll do is I'll have my staff, as they're completing, introduce each other. So Emily Rajakovic has come to us actually through the governor's office for now here over a year. When Emily first started with us, COVID was not here. 1 month later, it was. So in the meantime, we have done some miraculous things at ADOA. We have a new job board that's here. We've upgraded our HRIS system. Under Emily's leadership, we've gone out and had new procurements for both our employee healthcare and our employee wellness benefits. Just a plethora of really best practices and updates that have come out of our office, as you can imagine, through this crazy time of COVID. So I want to thank her publicly for being here, and I'm going to turn it over to her. And I know we're trying to keep these down to 5 minutes each. So thank you, Chairman, for having us here today. Happy to be of help.
Well, thank you, Director Tobin. Thank you, Director Tobin. Good morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners. It's a pleasure to be here with you this morning. Again, I'm Emily Rajakovic. I'm the State Human Resources Director out of Department of Administration. So our Human Resources Division, we administer the state personnel system. We have 34,000 state employees in 100 or so state agencies, boards, and commissions. And really, we have three primary functions, which I'll cover very briefly here. We maintain the technology infrastructure for all things related to human resources. That's our IT system, which houses our payroll and personal information on all of our employees. Our state job board, which we've recently revamped a couple months ago. Our hiring system, as well as the state employee self-service website, where employees would track compensation, enter time for their time card and paycheck. We also oversee the classification and compensation system, the pay structure for the state, as well as the personnel rules that govern the state personnel system, the rules that apply to leave, management, et cetera, that employees are held to through their employment with the state. Our Human Resources Division also provides agencies with employee relations support. These would be your HR, administrative inquiries and investigations, staffing, recruitment, job classification, recognition, workforce planning, succession planning, and operational HR support out at the agencies, and we do that in a number of ways. And finally, we have what we call our People Solutions team, which is responsible for the development of our state workforce. So we operate the performance management. This is your performance appraisal through state agencies. We do an annual engagement survey of all of our employees. And other tools and resources to build our state workforce, leadership development and training, and other ways our employees can develop through their employment with us. So I want to move next into some ways specifically our HR team may be able to aid in your upcoming steps as you seek to make some hires. So what we can offer is assistance in posting a job, the position description development, recruitment, advise on compensation structure for any hires that you may do. And then once that hire is made, once we have the person accepting a position, our HR team can assist with the onboarding of employees, what it means to work for the state of Arizona, cover the benefits that employees are eligible for. So we really do the soup to nuts on hiring new employees for the state and supporting agencies in doing so. I'll mention Director Tobin talked about how we've all, our work has evolved and we've really had to be quite flexible in our HR policies as it relates to COVID. We have a large portion of our state workforce is working remotely now for their safety. And as we learned more about COVID, we developed HR policy guidance specific to COVID needs in the workplace. So we have HR guidance, a workplace toolkit on safety for employees, really offer that guidance in consultation with our health partners for state employees and the state agencies. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions or we can move to the next topic. Thank you again for having me.
Thank you. I sure appreciate it. Madam Chairwoman, any questions for our HR department? Oops, I think you're on mute.
I am, I'm sorry. I had worked for the state government, so I understand a little bit about the process. Because of our time frame that we are working within, will it be possible for us to expedite some of the typical procedures that happen? Because sometimes hiring can take quite a while. So are there some things that we could be doing in the future to help us expedite things to be able to bring people on a little bit quicker?
Sure, Madam Chair, Commissioner Lerner, we could work to understand what your timeline and needs are and certainly fit the process within those needs. And we could make a proposal or recommendation based on your timelines. But it can be a lengthy process. You're absolutely right, but I think understanding your timeline would be helpful as we could aid in recruiting.
Any other questions of HR? I think we're ready to move on, Director Tobin. Thank you, Emily.
Okay, well, that's okay. I think I see Ed Jimenez there, so it's up to you, Emily. I'll let you take the lead.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah, sorry, I forgot to introduce my esteemed colleague, Ed Jimenez, who's the state's procurement officer, comes to us with a remarkable career in the private sector, leading with leadership at Boeing and the procurement office. So Ed, I will turn it over to you on your role within DOA and offerings for the Independent Redistricting Commission.
Okay, thank you, Emily. Thanks for the nice intro. Appreciate that. Good morning, everybody. Nice to meet you all here. As stated, I'm the State Central Procurement Authority, and I thought the best way for me to maybe get you up to speed on the State Procurement Office is if I have just a one-slide infomercial for you, which talks about procurement, all the things we can do to help you. So if you'll allow me to pull it up here, I'll share. And real quick, can you all see my screen? All right, thank you. So let me get this cleared here real quick. So we are all things procurement for the state of Arizona. I'll go from the left side down and then over to the right side if you would. So I'm delegated the authority by Director Tobin for all state procurement responsibility. We follow the Arizona Procurement Code, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. It's out there online. And we have a procurement compliance group, which helps all of our 130 plus agencies with their delegation authority, training and education about procurement integrity, the code, ethics, if you would. And so we do regular training sessions with them there. for you folks, we have 1,000 plus contracts out there that are available, and I'll show you those real briefly when I get further along here. And they're open to all agency boards, commissions, co-op members, if you would. Our co-op contracts generate 501 million on the cooperative contracts, which up on the top right, you see there's 903 cooperative members who have signed up, and it's really across 14 states. Our state agencies, they take advantage of our SPO Academy. Our SPO Academy has various training sessions on public law, procurement 101, ethics training, training on our procurement system, which is our procurement portal, which I'll talk about briefly. And then recently, we just established a new contract for PPE services and supplies. And so if you need any PPE requirements, we've got a statewide cooperative contract that you can take advantage of. There are 21 suppliers who were awarded to participate in that out of about 75 who applied. A very competitive process, if you would. Again, I talked about the active co-op members we have. Active suppliers we have in Arizona, 38,408 suppliers currently in our Arizona procurement system. Users of the procurement system is roughly 3,153 out there, and these are all of the state entities, not just procurement folks, they're finance folks, they're program folks who have authorized roles in the procurement system for their agency and division, if you would. And then we have a new supplier co-op module. This module is used to track the expenditures, quarterly reports on how much spent by agency and entity, so we can keep track of the spend out there, if you would. And then we have a brand new SPO website. If you go to spo.az.gov, that is where our website resides. It's very informative, very user-friendly, and I'm going to take you there here in a second. And then lastly, a couple last things here. We have a set-aside program. We have certain suppliers who work with folks who have handicap disabilities, and we've gained about 70 jobs for those type of folks through the training of these suppliers. And we recently supported all the election shelter activities with critical PPE supplies to keep everybody safe, the public and the folks who participated in the election. And what I'll do real quickly to show you here, and Yasmin has this, and she can send it to you folks. This is the new state procurement website that you can get to with that link I just showed you. What would be beneficial for you folks, based on what I heard about needing to hire people, lawyers maybe, and maybe some mapping type things. We have a contracts by category link here, and all you need to do is, based on the type of service you might be looking for, I will go click here on legal. That'll show you the legal contracts we currently have on a statewide basis. I'm sure that the Attorney General's office would be involved and would help assist you as well, but you'll be able to see the contracts we have and the various types we have for legal services, for example. And then I think in the inside, there's a statewide NASPO contract for what they call RE, and they do a lot in the mapping area, and so we can get you familiar with that. Nola Barnes may have a little bit more information on that one for you. But basically, you can pick any of these categories for types of services you might want. You know, public safety, office supplies, language services, if you would, IT resources. That's JR's camp, but all these things. So whatever you need as a startup with your team there, you can probably go here to this site, and then we'll also leave you our contact information. If you don't see something here, we can assist you. And as the previous person had asked about how can we expedite the process, we can work with you on that as well and stay within the procurement code. We can do those things. What's critical for us is understanding the customer's needs. So what is it you're looking for? What's the statement of work? And then we can help you get through that process fairly quick. And so that's my story. Any questions, anybody?
Ed, Madam Chairwoman, it's Andy Tobin. I believe the Independent Redistricting Commission is exempt from procurement rules, but I think I'll put that on the table for your council to address. But as you can see, we wanted to be available to you, so that's why we're anxious to do this presentation. I want to assure you that Ed did not buy that car behind him, through his family at this co-op. It's a photo, but it's a nice car nonetheless. So anyway.
Thanks for that, Director. That's an auction car from about 6 years ago. My baby.
Thank you.
Okay, any questions?
Ed, would you introduce Nola Barnes? You just mentioned her name, and then Nola can introduce JR when she's finished.
I'm happy to. So next up will be Nola Barnes. She leads our General Services Division. She's all things property, building, landscaping, lights. I mean, just she does everything out there, and she's a great partner. I've got to do a lot of partnering with Nola Barnes, and our teams work together very well. They handle all the construction contracts out there. She has a great team of folks who manage that process, very knowledgeable, and it's always like a one-stop shopping when you go get with Nola and her team. So we really appreciate working with her. So with that, Ms. Nola, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thank you, Ed. Madam Chairperson, members of the Commission, my name is Nola Barnes. I'm the Division Director of the General Services Division in the Department of Administration. So my area handles, well, as Ed mentioned, just about everything. We are the landlord for state-owned buildings in the Capitol Mall and several buildings in Tucson. We handle facilities operations and maintenance, building tenant services, tenant improvements. We do capital outlay planning for the DOA building system to manage capital outlay for about 4,000 structures around the state. We do project management for capital construction projects. We handle resolution of real property issues, disposing, acquiring property, resolving real property disputes with easements and things of that nature. We manage the state's private sector leasing program. We handle the mailroom, surplus property for the state, fleet resources, and then monuments and memorials and events in Wesley Bolin Plaza. So that's it in a nutshell. And I think the things that are probably most pertinent to your future discussion for now are mailroom services and allocation of hard wall space if you're not going to be doing all things virtually. I have 3 options for potential space for you all, and I can either go into that now about those addresses and the basic rental obligations there if you would like, or we could take that up at a future meeting. So just let me know how you'd like me to proceed. And then I have Chris Carlson here who will just talk about the mailroom, because I think that's probably your most immediate need, is figuring out how to get mail to the commission. So I'm available for any questions or feedback.
Madam Chairwoman, would you like Nola to present the options for space today, or?
Let me do a quick check-in with my fellow commissioners. We are going to need space just in terms of timing of our key responsibilities. I want to check in with my colleagues to see, do we want this right now?
I saw Doug with the thumb down. He didn't unmute himself. But
I won't take it personally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Commissioner Meal, we can't hear you.
You're on mute. There you go.
There we go. I think we're going to need space as soon as we have an executive director and then add other staff. I'm guessing we're 30 days from an executive director, which is really not that long. So I would suggest, Chairwoman, that you get together and look at the space that's being proposed and say yes to something. And I think I would be happy to give you that authority to do that without coming back to us.
Sweet.
Okay.
Nola,
And
would you make sure that Chairwoman Erica Newberg gets those 3 options, and we will be happy to set up space to have a walkthrough with you, Madam Chairwoman.
thank you. That would be helpful, and we will have our admin Yasmin, who is doing all things helpful to us right now, communicate with all commissioners just to keep you updated on the specific locations and the process. So, and anything else, Nola?
If you did want to hear about the mailroom, we could also provide that to you in an email, offline discussion, but Chris Carlson is available because the mail will probably come quicker than the space needs. So if you want him to just briefly go over that, he can do that. Chris, do you have a minute to go through that, please?
Yeah, of course. My name is Chris Carlson. I also work for the Department of Administration in the General Services Division and am the Surplus and Mailroom Manager. So for our mailroom services available, we do interagency mail at no charge, outbound services, including USPS and FedEx, is postage plus a 14% surcharge. We also do pre-sort in order to bring that cost down overall. We also offer scanning and electronic delivery of inbound mail. We're still developing a price structure for that. But we also have all of our mailroom staff taken federal and state privacy courses in order to protect all incoming mail. We offer printing and inserting services, which is also pricing structure in development currently. Those are both pretty new services we're offering because of COVID and all the working at home. We also deliver USPS, UPS, and FedEx to all of the suites in the Capitol Mall. We have a shuttle that travels between Phoenix and Tucson every day, and the charge for that is 75 cents per pound for what you're sending. We also allow the mailroom address to be used in case nobody will be at your suite or you need a package secured so that you can come and pick it up from the mailroom at your leisure.
Right,
And
Chris, I apologize. I'm going to have to interrupt you just for the sake of closing public comments. It is now 10:01 and public comment is now closed. Please note, members of the commission may not discuss items that are not specifically identified on the agenda. Therefore, pursuant to ARS 38-43101, action taken as a result of public comment will be limited to directing staff to study the matter, responding to criticism, or scheduling the matter for further consideration and decision at a later time. Thank you. Go ahead. I apologize.
no problem. Thank you. We are currently doing a mailroom remodel, which will also add lockers that will allow you to pick up any parcels or mail for extended hours. But our current mailroom hours are 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. And I believe that is all the services that we're offering right now. If you have any questions, I'm open to any.
So thank you, Mr. Carlson. I sure appreciate it. Thank you, Nola, for presenting from your division. So if it has to do with space and, and operations, we have the best here at ADOA. And I thank Nola for her leadership. I'm happy to move on to the next category, Madam Chairwoman, if that's all right with you. We have our IT support here as well, who's J.R. Sloan. So thank you for giving us an opportunity to present. JR is the head of all Arizona State IT. JR, moved in that position a little over a year and a half ago. Not only does he manage all of our state IT, which is supportive of all of our agencies out there, but when, all of the communication systems, all of the new production systems that are going into effect now, JR also does. It would take me longer to fill out, tell you about his resume than it will take to do this update. But I think it's worth the visual for you folks to see that we have your back and what JR does. So thank you.
Thank you, Director Tobin. Madam Chairwoman, Commissioners, it's a pleasure to speak with you today. Just to talk a little bit about asset, the director's provided a good introduction and overview. As a division of the Department of Administration, we do take responsibility for some statewide IT resources like the Shared Hosted Data Center, which is a actual data center physically located here in town, but it's at the Iron Mountain Data Center facility, if you're familiar with that, which is a world-class facility. We also are responsible, and I work with Ed on statewide contracts for consumption of cloud-based computing services. So from providers that like Amazon Web Services, Microsoft, Google, we make those contracts available and ensure that any of our state agencies that take advantage of those contracts are getting the benefit of the buying power of the state as we enter those things. And then we work as a coordination point to bring best practices for how to properly configure and secure those environments. We run the State Security Operations Center out of our division. And so we set security policy as well as IT policy and standards for agencies. And the other thing, another major thing that we do, as Director said, we watch over the major IT projects in the state. So really any IT project over $25,000 is going to flow through our organization. Anything over $1 million gets additional oversight. And we provide the kind of end-to-end reporting, and we seek to ensure that our agency partners are successful in executing their IT projects, as well as aligning those with the strategies of the state. So to get to maybe what is probably most interesting for you all, which will be the more tactical things that we do. Asset supports providing services to boards, commissions, agencies, and for folks like you, down to the details of laptops, phones, email, and productivity tools and software, getting all those things set up and configured for you. So I've got two members of my team that I've asked to join today who will be the primary points of contact to directly support you, and will probably work maybe more closely with your executive director when that position is filled to meet the needs of the commission going forward. So I want to introduce Michael Beller, who's the Director of Strategic Portfolio Management, and Sudi Syed, who is a member of our Engagement Management team. Michael?
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. I'm Michael Beller. As was stated, I'm the Director of Portfolio Management, so I am concerned with all things scalability, efficiency, and cost effectiveness of our IT services. So I'll try to keep it relevant to things that you're interested in. A brief overview from the top: we provide enterprise email, creative tools, things like Adobe Sign, email services. Cell phones are another great example of that. The commission can get most of what it needs for probably around $10,000 is what you're looking at annually. It will depend on your consumption. One of the things that we did in researching your current state, we took a look at a website that's existed. It's roughly about 20 years out of date. So this is azredistricting.org. It's a GoDaddy domain that is currently registered to the Ledge Council. So one of the challenges that we see is it's not part of our enterprise infrastructure for web management. So it's difficult to maintain those public records. Prior to this meeting, I did some research. I had the opportunity to sync with the Secretary of State's office, Library and Archives, who sets the record retention policy. There's two critical items on your website currently. One is they pertain to the General Schedule 1058, which is the schedule for maps, precincts, and districting. The requirement to maintain those records is permanent. The second is the public records around these meetings, which also is permanent as well. So we, in advance of this meeting, took the opportunity to create a new logo. The logo's roughly 20 years out of date. So if it pleases the commission, I can share with you the logo today that we're proposing.
Please.
Okay. So this is a standard state of Arizona logo. You'll notice that Independent Redistricting Commission is at the bottom, which identifies the nature of the commission. the previous logos at the top so I can share this document with you. It includes a link to an example, which is an independent oversight committee where we did a similar website. So this is an example of that website. I apologize, I can't actually go to the website because it's not secure. It won't allow me to go to it from my state computer. So this is the website as it is today. One of the things that Asset does is Asset maintains the platform for the website. So we don't maintain the website itself. We work with staff to maintain the website, but we maintain the infrastructure, and that's that. As it goes through security upgrades or as personnel change, we ensure that the information is maintained. So one of the primary concerns for this is that it's maintained through GoDaddy, and it's not maintained through the standard security infrastructure that the state provides. So that would be one long-term recommendation. This leads me to the proposed website. So we just stood this up as a placeholder for the commission. This would be an example where we could migrate the information from the previous website to this website and ensure that it is maintained into perpetuity and that everybody can access it. The other person that's on the call today that I wanted to introduce to you is Sudi. So Sudi is the part of the engagement manager team. She's responsible for helping ensure that agencies get everything that they need. So for example, she works to take the guesswork out of anything. If you need a website upgrade or somebody's having a technology problem or needs to get a cell phone, she can make sure that we're not, nothing's falling through the cracks and that she's carrying you through that process.
Thank you so much, Michael. Good morning, everyone. My name is Sudi Syed, and I'm your assigned engagement manager. My role is basically to assist you with your IT needs. I will be your first point of contact for anything that you need from the Strategic Enterprise Technology Group, also known as Asset. I would be more than happy to set up meetings with you over the next few days or few weeks to dive into your IT needs and see how we can provide support. I'm looking forward to working with you and seeing how we can help.
Thanks, Sudi. Are there any questions from the commission?
I just thank you for this. This is informative. I was just wondering if you showed some things about the website and all. It was kind of hard to see it. Would it be possible for you to send us those links or something so we can get a closer view at our time, kind of getting a feel for it?
Sure.
If possible.
Sure, Madam Commissioner. We prepared the documentation. It's all in a one-pager. I'm happy to provide it as well as a copy of the research.
Everything that's going out to the different commissioners will go to the administrative assistant, who can then disseminate it as needed to comply with open meeting law.
If I can, I'd just like to underscore that the sample website that was set up was really just to show we have templates. We moved some information over just to show kind of what's possible. You as the commission and your staff would have complete control over the content of the site. And they're designed in such a way that you don't have to know things like HTML code and web development. You really, folks can be given login credentials, and you really just work in a text editor that feels very much like a word processor, and then that information gets posted up to the site for you.
This is very helpful information. It's Michael was generous when he said that the site is a bit outdated. I think we all understand there needs to be an overhaul, and thanks so much that ADOA is available to help in the short term to just catch us up to speed so that we can relay the information in a user-friendly way that the modern generation connects to.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you, Sudi and Michael, and JR. Thanks for bringing your team on board today and being a part of this process. I'm very grateful. I know you got a lot in front of you, so thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Madam Chairwoman, I have, I believe, I'm not sure where I'm leaving off here. Did I introduce Ashley Ruiz yet? I don't think so, our head of accounting. So I'd like you to welcome Ashley Ruiz. Ashley is new to our executive team, but not new to state government, and has a plethora of successes along the way following her time with state government. But I've asked her to head up our really a new division here at ADOA. She serves as our chief accountant over here, and her staff manages to keep the most important numbers available to the executive, as you can imagine, which are like, what's our balances, what's our, are we making our payments on time, all that stuff. All of this is on Ashley Ruiz. We're thrilled to have her here. Incredible for us, the state comptroller of the state of Arizona. I'll give you Ashley Ruiz.
Thanks so much, Director. Good morning, everybody. So I'll mention a couple of things that our division does, the new name of our division, and then I'll go in kind of the more specific services that we offer out to small boards, commissions, and smaller agencies as well. So previously, the ADOA had the General Accounting Office, and while we still have the General Accounting Office, we've kind of streamlined all of the budget, finance, and reporting responsibilities that are within ADOA, and we've umbrellaed them under the Division of Business and Finance. So the General Accounting Office still definitely exists. It just now exists within a larger division. And so as Director mentioned, we oversee the state's finance and accounting system, APHIS. We also manage all of the appropriations that are enacted by the legislature every year. And then we also have a group called I have a little presentation called our Central Services Bureau. And our Central Services Bureau is a team of dedicated financial reporting, budget, accounting, and payroll staff that assist smaller boards and commissions and smaller agencies that can't necessarily afford, or they don't really have the bandwidth for one or two dedicated FTEs to those kinds of activities. So they sign an ISA with our CSB group, and we provide those services to them. So I just have a really quick presentation that I'll go through. Let me make sure that I can bring it up for everybody. And I'll just kind of go through our staff, our services, and about how much those services cost. Okay, so hopefully everybody can see the presentation that I have up. Oh, I accidentally clicked share instead of, sorry. All right, hopefully everybody can see that. So again, the name of the group is the Central Services Bureau. We do have a staff that includes an accounting manager and a financial services supervisor. That's our leadership staff within the group. Combined just with those two individuals, I think it's like over 30 years of accounting and budget experience between the two of them. So they're the best leaders for this group. We also have two accountant fours who are responsible for providing our customers all financial reporting, so status of funds, required reports to OSPB and the legislature. And then we also have a support staff, 5 accounting techs who do the day-to-day work of budget and accounting, including paying bills, accounts payables, accounts receivables, payroll, and things of that nature. Just a high overview of the services that we do offer. Like I said, pretty much end-to-end budget accounting and financial services, accounts payable, accounts receivable, all APHIS processing, purchasing through our state's e-procurement system that Ed described, our APP system, budget preparation and submission, which this is actually, I'm not sure if the Independent Redistricting Commission has to prepare a budget, but we do provide those services, payroll, and then of course financial reporting, cash flow, and year-end closing reports as well. And then if your group doesn't require such large such large services or a big kind of scope of services, we also provide backup services as well. So that's approving documents, receiving deposits, and things like that. And these can all be kind of mixed and matched a la carte, if you will. And then the last thing, like I said, we sign ISAs with all of our customers that are reviewed annually. The average cost for a pretty robust ISA, including most of those end-to-end budget, accounting, and financial services, is about $25,000 to $40,000 annually, based on transaction count and the size of the budget. And then also that we charge just to help out when needed. And with that, that's all that I had prepared for the group today. But of course, if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer any.
So, Madam Chairwoman, I know that's a lot in a very short period of time, but I know this commission is up to it, and I know they have great expectations of us, and we're happy to be here and be that supportive edge for you in any direction you choose. And we just want to make sure that we're doing all we can to be of assist to the Independent Redistricting Commission so you can get on with your tasks. So, and with that, I don't have any further reports or presentations for you, but I do thank you for your time, and I thank the entire commission for your services.
Director Tobin, we thank you. We thank all of your colleagues at the Department of Administration. You're providing invaluable resources for all of us. This was a lot of information. We'll digest it, and we appreciate all of it. With that, I don't know if any of my commissioners have any motions or any action items they want to propose from this presentation, or if not, we'll move on to the next item. Thank you very much, all of you. You've been fabulous.
Thank you.
Okay. It looks like we're ready to move on to the next item. Let me ask a question of the group here. We're going to move to item 8, which is discussion and possible action on a pending open meeting complaint. There is a possibility that we will move into executive session to seek legal counsel. And so my question for you right now is, do we want to break right now and then come back, talk about it publicly, and then go into executive session if we decide to do so? Or do you prefer to dive in for maybe a few minutes, digest the information, and if and when we go into executive session, we'll break then? I'm open to your preferences. It's been a while already.
We can dive in. This is Commissioner Watchman. I'm okay with that.
Commissioner York would agree with that.
Okay, let's dive in.
David,
we're on item number 8, and we did receive a complaint. And let me just, again, I know this is repetitive for the group, but for legal purposes, I am going to repeat the language. The next item on the agenda is discussion and possible action on pending open meeting complaints. Please note the commission may vote to go into executive session, which will not be open to the public, for the purpose of obtaining legal advice and providing direction to counsel per ARS 38-431, section A, 3, and 4. For the sake of our conversation, we're going to refer to this as the Howard complaint. It was submitted on Thursday, January 21st, and it states, immediately after being sworn in on January 14th, the interim chair asked for a motion to adjourn into executive session, which was not scheduled. They then presumably discuss the questions and process for the candidate interviews. The complainant says, I do not believe either of these conversations was privileged. And then on January 21st, the commission went live 11 minutes after the scheduled meeting to begin due to technical difficulties. After approving the minutes, they immediately adjourned into executive session again, giving no indication of time frame for reconvening the public session. It goes on to basically say that the discussion of the final candidates to serve as chair, this person did not believe that that was a privileged conversation. And to just reiterate, I think the feel the essence of the complaint. To quote it, there are 5 commissioners on the AIRC, but there is a 6th chair at the table, a chair for the public. I look forward to your response. And so with that, we can open up to discussion.
I appreciate the concerns of the public, and I think we need to be very sensitive to this going forward and to be careful when we go into executive session. But certainly going into executive session for the discussion on the candidates was something that was very typical of the previous 2 commissions, and I think was appropriate.
And I will agree with Commissioner Meal, and it was unanimous by the commissioners at the time that we felt that that was an appropriate course of action. It was not done in any way to harm the public, but that was what we felt was necessary at the time.
I echo the 2 commissioners' thoughts, and certainly, I did see the public comment as well, and, I appreciate the public comment, and, we as a commission trying to get our feet wet with all the rules and regulations. I myself am, comfortable with the tribal side, so this is new to me. So, so as my fellow commissioner said, we'll obviously be cognizant of it going forward. So, that's pretty much all I have to say.
I echo what my fellow commissioners have said. I encourage the public to have some patience. We're all getting our feet wet. None of us have done this before. There are a lot of legal requirements, and because of that, I think the nature of the 5 of us is that we want to err on the side of caution and do things properly. But we very much hear the message of this complaint, and I think that it's incumbent upon us to acknowledge that it's consistent with the feel of the other public comments that we're getting, which is basically, please do as much of your work in the public eye as possible. And we hear that, and we take that to heart. Before I want to see if there's any other comments or questions on that. We now have a legal question, potentially a legal question of how do we respond? And I'm not quite as certain about the legal protocols about responding to complaints like this. And so that's a separate conversation. So to first finish up the first conversation, if any other commissioners want to speak to the heart of the matter before we speak to the legal issue. Okay. Legally, I don't know if counsel on the call right now feels that this is a conversation to begin in the public discourse. If at this point, we'd like a little feedback from you. I'm inclined, and I don't want to prejudge. We identified in the agenda the possibility of going into executive session. And as I said earlier, we want to err on the side of caution as it relates to fulfilling our legal obligations. So if there's anything legal counsel wants to say at this point before we make a determination on that.
I think at this point, Madam Chairman, we need to move to executive session.
Okay. Do I have a motion to adjourn to executive session?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Do we really need to go into executive session now, or should it be better? Would it be better for the public to hear the advice that we're given on how to respond to these questions? I don't know that that's something that we really need to do in executive session.
I'm open to the legal counsel here. I don't have the legal expertise to know what the appropriate methods of response are. So if legal counsel wants to chime in.
If you are interested in legal advice that maintains the attorney-client privilege, we would do that in executive session. If you wish to waive the attorney-client privilege, then the conversation can happen in the open general session.
Okay. You know, just with the sensitivity of this and given my lack of legal expertise, if we are going to err on the side of caution, we may want to move to do a very brief, I don't anticipate this is going to be a long period, but we may want to err on the side of caution. Thoughts?
Well, back to my original comment, I believe we need to have this discussion in executive session to basically get ourselves aligned so we can answer the complaint.
I'll second that.
Okay, we'll do a quick vote. Commissioner Watchman?
Aye.
Commissioner Meal?
Aye.
Commissioner Lerner?
Aye.
Commissioner York?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. With that, we will move into executive session. We will move into a different link, and for the public, we don't anticipate that this will be an extremely lengthy conversation, and we look forward to sharing feedback. Thank you.
Okay, and we are back live. I believe we're just waiting for Commissioner Mill to rejoin.
Okay. Welcome back to the public. If anybody's watching, we're just waiting for one of the commissioners to rejoin. We're taking a very quick break before we resume our public portion.
It looks like Commissioner Mill has joined.
Yes, I believe now we're waiting for Commissioner Lerner. I don't see Commissioner Watchman on my screen. Is Commissioner Watchman on the line? Yeah. Okay, Commissioner Watchman, if you can hear us, we can't see you or hear you. We'd love you to be present if possible.
Hey, Derek.
Oh, there you are. Okay, wonderful. We are going to go back into public session. Thank you to legal counsel. We've been advised that the county attorney's office is tasked with looking into this complaint, and we've authorized the attorneys of, excuse me. We are going to discuss ways in which we can respond to this complaint. The county attorney's office will investigate, and we have the option of talking about this one through a process perspective and then an action item. And so with that, I open it up to discussion. If anybody wants to share recommendations about how to move forward with the Howard complaint.
Madam Chair, I will recommend that our attorneys work with the county attorney's office on reviewing the complaint and answering any questions and addressing any issues that need to be addressed.
Do I have a second?
I would second that.
Okay, quick vote call. Commissioner Watchman.
Aye.
Commissioner Meal. Commissioner, I think I heard an aye. You may have been on mute.
Aye.
I saw it, but didn't hear it. Commissioner Lerner.
Aye.
And Commissioner York.
Aye.
And I am an aye. And then in terms of the process, you know, I think that this item is very consistent with some of our other discussions in terms of our intentions to have a process that is open and fair while maintaining our legal authority to be able to seek private counsel in executive session. And I think it's important to note that the possibility of going into executive session was appropriately written in the agenda. And so the commissioners followed the script and followed the statutory guidelines. We will have the county attorney's office look into it, but in terms of the process perspective, we are hearing very much the public sentiment. Anything else on this issue? Okay, we're going to move on to item 9, which is presentation of general open meeting and public records law review. This will be a briefing from our legal counsel. We're going to move this to the end of the agenda, just given time management concerns, because we really need to move on to item number 10, which is discussion and possible action on executive director and other administrative support positions. And as we begin to have dialogue about this, I think there are 3 buckets to really think this through. One is an interim executive director position, whether that's something that we'd like to seek. And then in terms of the full executive director position, there's a question of job description, what we're looking for, and then there's a discussion of process. How is it that we go about hiring? And so with that, I would like to open up discussion, and we can really start with any of those 3 buckets or wherever you all feel is the best place to start.
Well, commissioners, I have a question, maybe in terms of process, I guess, to some extent. If we move forward on developing a job description now, if we can, I guess the question is, could we be potentially hiring, and it would then go to the interim question, if we could be hiring within a month to 6 weeks, if we work on the job description now, advertise, and we're meeting on a weekly basis, let's say, to get through that. I guess that would be my preference, would be to try to expedite our hiring process rather than hire an interim. So work on a job description now to move forward.
Commissioner Lerner, let me clarify, when we talk about an interim director, what is available to us through the Department of Administration is, in past commissions, they have appointed. The commission is not required to go through the process of hiring. The Department of Administration assigns somebody or chooses somebody who may be available to serve in an interim executive director position. Of course, we as the 5 commissioners have the ability to review, credentials and choose on our own whether this is somebody we would like to work with. But in the process of hiring an executive director, and in light of the presentations that we heard from the Department of Administration, there's a lot of knowledge about state government, processes of hiring, that if we had somebody in place with governmental knowledge to facilitate and serve as the glue to help us expedite that process, that may be advantageous, because I've heard from the commission the word expedite. And I think as we think about an interim director, the question is, would that expedite our process of finding our ultimate executive director that works for us?
Thank you for the clarification.
I have a question for Mr. Tobin. Andy, is there someone that can be assigned that would be helpful to us right now?
Director, you're muted.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Madam Chairman, and Commissioner Mail. So listen, I'm not going to sugarcoat this. We read the statutes. There's nothing in there saying I should be appointing an executive director. temporarily or what have you. So I will share with you that it's not our intention to do so. I think the fastest course here is for us to, get a job description, put it out there, and let you folks go vote on it. I have all those people who came that are uniquely talented, and they are all deeply sincere about helping. I will tell you, they are absolutely buried. This COVID thing sent 500 people from our building home in less than 3 weeks, and they're not back yet. You're in a building right now that doesn't have very many people in it. So I do not have a sitting spare for you, an executive director spare. I'm wanting to be helpful myself, but I'm not. I don't think, for obvious reasons, I should be jumping into that role, because I don't think it would help the board. I was on one of these once before. So I apologize to you, Madam Chairwoman, that I don't have an appointment for you today, an executive director appointment. I don't see one coming. I think that the fastest way to get this thing going is let the Human Services Division post a job opening for you, and let's get some applications in so that you and your commissioners can narrow it down and pick somebody very quickly. I get Yasmin back, because once you pick an executive director, I'm hoping they'll come along with an administrative assistant as well. So, but we're going to support you as much as we can, but I don't have any intention of appointing an interim executive director right now.
And Mr. Tobin, is Yasmin going to be able to help us until we have those two positions filled of executive director and then?
Well, I'll be honest with you. We are in a very weak spot with our, with doing so much outside. So I don't want to say that we won't be able to help, but potentially having an administrative assistant and the executive director put out for public bid is a good idea, and to do that immediately. Yasmin didn't realize she was going to be doing this 3 weeks ago. So I'm just telling you. And I do have some issues. She's employed by the Arizona Department of Administration, so I don't have my lawyer in your meetings, your executive meetings, when you break off. So I feel like I'm not doing her a service as well. So I think the fastest I can get a job description out there to the public and start giving you folks real applications from real people who want to be part of this movement and have the talent, I think it's myself.
As we talk this through, I want to just make sure that we're focused on a very practical challenge, and that has to do with open meeting laws. We are restricted from doing any business directly with each other. And so because of that, we are dependent upon somebody like Yasmin or some person who has the authority to communicate. Otherwise, the process of moving through all of these stages becomes a little unwieldy. Who would be the person to communicate? And so we're deeply appreciative of Yasmin's time. She's amazing. Will there be enough resources such that our basic needs of communication can be fulfilled?
So Madam Chairwoman, if that's a question to me, my answer is that I don't know what it is that Yasmin can't do to create this communication for you in the meantime. I just don't. I mean, at the end of the day, directing all of these appropriate resumes to your office directly so that Yasmin can then take them individually and direct them to your commissioners. I think that's part of what our expectation is as well. So
well, it has to do with hours. I mean, she has a full-time job with ADOA. It's the number of hours that we are in a position to ask for. I mean, that's really the bottom line is what are, can we have the services that we feel that we need in order to do our job?
Well, Madam Chairwoman, I think you deserve those services, and I think that the fastest way to get to them is to have us go out for bid for all of the services you need as quickly as possible, and get permanency to this and get somebody up and running as fast as we can. I do not have another Yasmin to hand off to you at this time either.
I apologize for interrupting, but we lost Commissioner Meal.
Okay.
It may be worth holding on for a moment, just so the Director Tobin doesn't have to repeat himself.
Okay, let's give a minute for Commissioner Meal to dial back in.
Set it up so everything on our end should be fine. So we're actually on it, and hopefully.
So thank you, Pamela, for doing. Oh, okay, we have somebody back on.
I don't see Commissioner Meal yet.
Yeah.
I actually just got off the phone with him. It looks like he's having technical difficulties, but he will try to join by phone.
Okay. While we're waiting, well, I guess we can wait. Pam, I don't know if it would be appropriate to ask any additional questions, or do we just wait?
You still have a quorum, so you can continue on, but you do need, and that would be for, I want to say, Ms. Miller, to note that Commissioner Meal is not presently here, and then when he rejoins, she would note again that he's returned.
Okay. Why don't we give it a couple more minutes, and if he doesn't rejoin, we can proceed with dialogue and hope that he joins in soon.
So Commissioner Newberg, I'd like to move along with the discussion around a job description and a posting, and a job description for the executive assistant.
Yeah.
I know in previous commissions there has been some job descriptions created, and I'd like to use those as a reference going forward.
Great.
if everybody's comfortable moving forward with dialogue while we wait for Commissioner Meal to join, let's proceed. Commissioner York.
I believe that the previous commissioner did try to go out to open market for executive director and had created a executive director job description. Am I correct, Director Coben?
That was my understanding too. I haven't actually seen the exact description, but it is also my understanding that that exists, as does the one for the admin. And I think there's potentially, I think there's one for your consulting, mapping consultant too. So my view, you all should have all of that data, and you should be instructing me or the chairwoman to go out and post that for applicants to begin the process.
So my thought process, or my request of the commission, would be to gather that data and review it prior to our next meeting to make a suggestion to Director Tobin and his staff to produce a job description to the public.
I think Madam Chairwoman and commissioners, I think you also have, you either, as I'm reading this, you'll either select the Attorney General's office, or you can go out for those job descriptions as well. You're not required to use the Attorney General's office. It says here that you shall have you have standing and the authority to whether the Arizona Attorney General or counsel hired by or selected by you shall represent your legal services. So I think 10 years ago, I think they hired 2 outside counsel at one of their very imminent meetings right after selection. And anyway.
Director Tobin, sorry to interrupt. Just for the record, Commissioner Mill has rejoined.
Thank you. Commissioner David Mill has returned. Okay.
I concur with Commissioner York's. I know we were sent a few job descriptions, but I did not see the one for the executive director. So it would be very helpful if we could see what was done last 10 years ago. I mean, just so we have something to start with.
Yeah. Jasmine, did you find any job descriptions, Jasmine, from the previous?
I did send something over. I think on one of them, I think it was ASO4. I think that's what it's called. Is that the one that they moved the deputy director into the director position, if I'm not mistaken?
We have not seen the job description for the executive director. We've seen the job descriptions for the subordinate positions. But that, yes, I mean, I think this is something that we can absolutely get. And if there are perspectives or opinions of the commissioners about what we're looking for to put our own imprint on that, that would be appropriate to discuss during this agenda item.
I think we should assume we may not find an existing description for an executive director from the last go around, and we should just concentrate, I think, on a fairly brief job description that would have the key leadership or key background things that we think are the most important, but not get too extravagant in the details of it.
Please share.
We could provide a draft of something that's close for this commission to then review and work on if we can't find an original one, if that's fair.
That's fair.
Okay.
That would be great. If we
That would be helpful. And I think we should review at the same time the administrative assistant, and let's go. So if we samples of both of those that we then can, and I guess we're not allowed to email one another, but we could all email Yasmin some comments, and she could combine all the comments and send them out.
That would be, I agree with that suggestion. I think we did get an administrative assistant draft that we could look at, but the one that it was missing was the director. We have a deputy director, for example, but it was signed by the past director. So it would be really helpful if you could provide us with that job description, a draft, and then we work from there. So I agree. The more we have and that we can respond to, the easier it'll be for us. That's the kind of.
I'll personally meet with Yasmin after today's meeting and see what we've got and begin the process with our HR department to get you folks what you need. Make those choices.
Thank you, Director Tobin, and that relates to our earlier conversation about making sure that Yasmin has enough hours to be able to facilitate all of this.
Right.
You know, because I do get a feel it's a consensus amongst the commissioners that we want to expedite as quickly as possible getting staff in place. I do want to, you know, as we're talking about multiple positions, we focused on executive director, people are bringing in admin. You know, I think that there is a hierarchy in that the executive director will likely be a staff manager and responsible for overseeing or at least being an integral cog in the system. And so, you know, as we're discussing our priorities, I would like to hear your feedback if executive director is really number one, because from that, he or she may be able to play a significant role in training, hiring, and doing the, you know, other hires after that.
Madam Chair, I think that we should hire only the executive director first, but I would still recommend we go out with the job description and posting for the administrative assistant, so that the moment we've hired an executive director, he can review the applicants and start working on hiring the administrative assistant. So I agree with not hiring that administrative assistant directly, but getting it all teed up and ready so that we're as quick as we can be.
I concur.
I agree.
Okay. Any other dialogue about, you know, I'm hearing that we don't want to be limited by past job descriptions. We want to, you know, keep it basic so that we cast a wide net. Anything that anybody wants to go on record right now in terms of sharing what you're personally looking for in this role? I'd like to share, you know, given the opens, you know, I feel that as a chair, I need a partner who's excellent in communication skills to be the conduit between all of us, somebody who can handle stress, you know, and somebody with good governmental knowledge about how things are done. If there's any other specifics that anybody wants to share now as we, you know, shape this, please join in.
I would add that someone who is knowledgeable about the different areas of the state.
Okay. Any other discussion about expediting executive director, other administrative support positions? Okay. My sense is the consensus is we want to expedite the process. We need to move forward as fast as possible to get some staff in place. We have a few descriptive items. We will wait to receive guidance from ADOA in terms of past descriptions. And then we will have Yasmin consolidate that information and get it back to all of us commissioners so we can move forward as fast as possible with getting some kind of job description out and get the hiring process expedited.
As a point of clarification, Chair, I
Yes.
assume it's also meaning that when Ms. Ramos sends out the information, it would be done in compliance with the open meeting laws.
Absolutely, which speaks to our need for expediting this process. Our administrative assistant will blind copy everybody. Nobody will convene or discuss or do any other business outside of the open meeting laws. Okay, so just for terms of clarity, do we have a motion for next steps as it relates to the executive director position?
I so motion.
And what are you specifically motioning?
That we move forward with the review of a a draft job description for the executive director to further then move to make that selection and out to market.
I'll second that, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Watchman. Thank you, Commissioner York. We'll take a quick vote. Commissioner Watchman?
Aye.
Okay, Meal?
Aye.
Lerner?
Aye.
York?
Aye.
Newberg is an aye. The motion passes. Okay, so we're.
I would have
Yes.
an additional motion that we also prepare a
Yes.
job description for administrative assistant, and that we review it in a similar fashion to the executive director job description.
Okay, that was you moved. Was that a motion? Did you move that?
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
Do I have a second?
I will second that.
Okay. Again, Commissioner Watchman,
Aye.
Meal,
Aye.
Lerner,
Aye.
York,
Aye.
Newberg is an aye. Okay, the motion carries. We're moving now on to the next item, discussion and possible action on securing legal and other consultative support. Is there discussion on this item?
So Director Tobin indicated that last time outside attorneys were hired rather than use the Attorney General's office. So I think it's something we should discuss if that's the direction that we would like to go, and then how we proceed with that.
I do recommend that we hire our own counsel, because I think there's counsel that has specific knowledge on the election laws and the redistricting issues that we're going to be facing. And it sounds like both in 2000 and in 2010, dual counsel was hired. And I suspect that that might be better for us to follow that pattern and hire dual counsel.
Commissioner Meal, just for the sake of our public, can you explain a little bit what that means, dual counsel?
I think from a practical aspect, it means that attorneys that may have leanings towards one party and other attorneys that may have leanings towards another party, but both who are committed to working for the commission and for the independence of the commission, and that hopefully can get along with one another and work together so that we're all comfortable with the advice that we're getting.
If it helps, I can provide some information regarding the options in terms of how many different routes are available.
That would be great.
Helpful. Yeah, that would be very helpful to send it through Yasmin to the rest of us.
And I will concur with Commissioner Meal as well. I recall that was the process that we followed in the past, and that seems probably to be the best route for this time as well.
Okay. Any other commissioners want to weigh in on this?
This Commissioner Watchman, I think it's a good idea, following the precedent has been put in place. And so, I don't, maybe when we select our director, that person, he or she, can help us with scoping out, the qualities and the particulars that we need. But, in general, in concept, having two different groups to represent us, I think that's, a good course of action. So, on the agenda, it says other consulting support too. Is that for the mapping company, or that's probably a separate issue? But the same thing. I think we can, through our director, have that person put together kind of an idea, an outline of what kind of consulting services we need. Beyond what we have provided by Director Tobin's shop. So, thank you.
Yeah, you know, as we think through this decision, I want to make sure that everybody's on the same page with understanding how this system might work together. So as I've looked into the possibility of dual representation as the independent and the chair here, I obviously was, you know, concerned or interested to know how that would work to really represent our collective whole. And it does sound like there are firms out there that have precedence and experience of working with the other, you know, side and collectively providing legal advice and experience, such that when I looked into it, you know, along the lines of my fellow commissioners, I too believe that I'm comfortable with this approach, feeling that they would collectively represent all of us, but also ensure all sides were adequately represented. It sounds like there's consensus on that. I'd like to ask a deeper question of, do we want at this point to go into anything further about what we're looking for? Or is that premature? You know, I'm presuming that our executive director and administrative assistant might be helpful in this process. You know, we'll have weekly meetings to discuss, you know, some of this, the specifics. Is there anything else that the commissioners want to dive into right now as it relates to first legal counsel, and then, as Commissioner Watchman mentioned, that the agenda item opens it up to other consultation as well?
If I could just provide you some information regarding the attorney process. If, and it sounds as if there's a desire to go for outside counsel, assuming the commission wants to do that, you can go one of two ways. You can do it either by an RFP, which is where you put out bids yourself, or you can go through the procurement process. If you go through the procurement process, then you have the built-in safeguards that come with the procurement process, which is, you know, compliance with all the state laws, making sure that you're hitting on all the things such as the ethical requirements, you know, any mandatory state terms and conditions, that sort of thing. And because that's a process that's already set up, and this would of course apply to some of the other things you're looking for, you may find that that moves a little faster because you're not having to set anything up from the very beginning.
Yeah, Pam, and there's also the outside counsel contract. And so there are attorneys who've already been procured, I believe, through the Attorney General's office. And so there may be attorneys that are already procured on a state contract that you may want, and instead of going through the entire procurement process, may be able to just hire those attorneys through the state contract for already procured attorneys, if that makes sense, depending on who you want. Because I know you did say that there are firms that you had looked at. So those firms may be on the already procured state contract for counsel.
I think that's what Ed was speaking of before. I think he walked the commission through the procurement system and walked them through the the legal folks who were already approved on contracts.
Yeah, exactly what Dr. Tobin stated. So if you have somebody in mind, they may already be procured on a state contract that you can look up there, rather than your own whole procurement process starting all over from the beginning.
Taking a step back, though, speaking with my commissioners, do we want to take a moment to think through, similar to our executive director conversation, our criteria, what we're looking for? Because we're not limited. I would say this is an incredibly important hire. As you all know, when I interviewed, we all move into this with the expectation and desire for no litigation, or as less litigation as possible. But you know, at the end of the day, this is serious work and it's complicated, and so let's think through what we really need to do it right. You know, thoughts on what we're looking for. It sounds like there's consensus with dual, but specifically, you know, you know, I mean, in my opinion, I'm thinking about levels of expertise. This is a niche. This is, you know, it needs, you know, a firm that can handle serious litigation, you know, with political implications. So I'd like to think through a little bit what it is that we're looking for so that we can aim, you know, our target more accurately.
I would suggest that we're looking for firms that have experience in the redistricting laws. And I think that's a very specific experience that we want to be looking for. And sorry about that.
Yeah, so a firm that specializes in redistricting, and you know, a serious specialty.
And I also would suggest that we want, if we're looking for dual firms, that we want firms that can evidence that they can work together.
I will concur with Commissioner Meal. Ideally, it would be really great if we could find a single nonpartisan firm that we all could work with. But I think the previous two commissions haven't found that, which is why I think we're looking at two firms. But if there was one that we all could agree, that would be great. But otherwise, I think that what Commissioner Meal is proposing with those, I think we have to have people who know election law, who understand redistricting. Ideally, some of those would have, when you say together, even within their firms, they would basically show that they've got folks from all sides, so that they have been able to work even within and outside of their firms in a collaborative fashion.
And listening to Commissioner Lerner, I think that we shouldn't lock ourselves into saying it will be two firms, but we should be open to two firms. But if a firm can convince us that they can satisfy all of us, we should be willing to look at either one firm or a combination of two firms.
Okay. And it, you know, just recognizing that the niche of this, you know, redistricting is once every 10 years, you know, it is difficult to find firms that have this specific specialty, given that it doesn't arise on a regular expertise and moving into this with some flexibility, dual legal counsel, but leaving open the possibility of finding the ideal law firm is what's on everybody's mind. Any other discussion?
Commissioners, if I could just clarify too, while I think it would be great to find those with experience in redistricting, I think that would potentially limit us to some extent. So I think election law, which is a little broader, would be equally important as well. And that's something that doesn't just happen every 10 years, but people may be involved on a regular basis with that.
Okay, it sounds like there's consensus to have it be a specialized law firm that has expertise in election law, not being overly specific so that we don't cast a wide net, to look at larger firms that have that robust ability to handle litigation. Do we have a motion to move in this direction, or any other comment before we move into a motion?
Madam Chair, a comment. Director Tobin mentioned through their programs that potentially they have law firms ready to go, and so once we move with this motion, I think we should consult with I think it's Ed, the gentleman that
Sure.
just to see what's available there. But certainly you're right. I echo what my fellow commissioners are saying, and that is experience in redistricting law, experience in litigation, experience in Arizona law, and I think those are probably the large topical areas. And so I think we're on a good path. Thank you.
I think Yasmin was going to send that link to everybody on the state procurement office link to the legal section.
That is correct.
So, Madam Chair, I make a motion that we move forward with scoping out procurement for legal services. We first check with Director Tobin's agency and see get an idea of what services are being provided through that service. Get some feedback from there. Then we can scope out, keeping in mind that the qualifications that my fellow commissioners outlined. So I make a motion that we move forward on that process.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Vote call. Commissioner Watchman.
Aye. Commissioner
Meal.
Aye.
Commissioner Lerner.
I just have a point of order.
Sure.
Because I was not under the impression we were actually moving forward with starting to look for hiring legal counsel. I thought we were going to actually narrow down our needs, and that we were, I guess for me, the priority is still the executive director. So I'm not sure what this motion is actually about. So I guess I just have to ask that question. Clarification over, is this saying we're now moving forward to try to hire, or what is this motion?
No, Madam Chair, no. It's starting to scope out, what we need, and what services and what law firms do we have on contract through the Department of Administration. I think we should look there so that hopefully it all comes in line. And so I'm not recommending we move forward with hiring any law firm, but we should have at least start thinking about if for example there's some firms that meet the qualifications through the Department of Administration, I think we should look at it. But basically this motion here is to move forward to scope out all the possibilities, who's on staff or who's on contract, keeping in mind the qualifications. That's really all I'm suggesting in my motion.
I would suggest that once we do that we actually fairly quickly do a procurement notice or whatever it is, and have people applying for these positions, similar to the administrative assistant, where we move forward and hire the executive director, but have gathered applications and people who are interested in these positions, so that we can then quickly, once we have an executive director, make these other decisions. Even though it seems like we have a lot of time, it's going to be amazing how quick all this goes. So that's why I would suggest we move the process forward on procurement in an orderly fashion.
So, commissioners, I guess from my perspective, it's not just procurement. I'd like to have us be focused on getting we've talked a little bit about what we're interested in, but I feel, and I'm okay, but I feel like we're moving to procurement before we've got other things figured out with that. So I feel it's moving a little quickly to just saying, let's look at procurement. I do want to move quickly. I totally agree, Commissioner Meal, with that, but I'm just not sure of the process, whether we jump into procurement, because there may be plenty of firms not in DOA's procurement area as well, and I don't want to be exclusionary to them. So I understand what you're saying is that we can look at that, but I'm not sure where that gets us at this point, if we can't just go ahead and start the process of creating the description for what we're looking for, and then we can put it out there, and those on procurement will be actually one step ahead because they don't have to go through some of the process that those not on procurement. Not sure if I'm making sense, but so that's why I was asking this question at this point. I'm not sure if going to procurement at this point is right, or if we should actually get the job description, put it out there, and then we'll see who's on procurement and who is not. We were in the middle.
Any thoughts to Commissioner Lerner's comments?
I don't think we're really saying different things. The wording may be confusing, but I agree with getting the description of the type of law firms done. And frankly, I encourage each of us as commissioners to reach out to our own contacts, and to the extent you can encourage firms to then be taking a look at it that you think would be good firms. And then be ready to go to procurement when we're comfortable with the description.
If Commissioner Neal, if that's what we're saying, I'm okay with that, but that wasn't what I was hearing, so that's why I asked for clarity.
Well, Madam Chair, if I could restate my motion.
Yes.
If I could, just borrowing what Commissioner Neal is saying, I think that's what my thought is. Let's move forward. Identify the qualities and qualifications, look for potential firms to contract with, but we do have right now through Director Tobin's shop, some folks that are already on board. And so if there is firms on board that meet what we're looking for, then, the process is done, but if not, then we do our own search. But I know many of us do have, law firms that we know here in the state. I do, I know all of us do. And so, but the big thing is to get the process going. And the big thing is to understand, what kind of resources do we have available. So, if that sums my motion, I'd like to, continue and restate the motion in that fashion.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion before we move to vote? Commissioner Watchman, your vote to approve,
Yep,
yay
aye.
or
I'm
nay?
trying to unmute. Sorry.
Commissioner Meal.
Aye.
Commissioner Lerner.
Aye.
Commissioner York. I didn't hear you. You nodded.
Sorry. Aye.
Okay. And Newberg is an aye. The motion passes. And, just to reiterate, to bring it back to an earlier agenda item, we are going to be meeting on a regular basis, much to the stress of our staff members involved with the frequency of having to get all of this work done. But it's okay if we don't do procurement today. Getting these descriptions in place, I think we're on a good pace to be able to move forward in a relatively quick way. Moving on to the next item, number 12, discussion and possible action on the scheduling of upcoming meetings. We had a conversation earlier about our intentions. This, I think, is the opportunity for us to talk through the specifics of our calendars, our preferences. And with that, I would like to just say that, we are making a commitment to the public in good faith to schedule and have everything be as predictable and consistent as possible. Real world and, items don't necessarily work as neatly all the time. And we do reserve the right within legal limits to schedule what we need to do in order to get our business done. It will 100% be done with the statutes of the Constitution and the state. But along those lines, thoughts about days, times, what works for you all?
Mornings work best for me, and preferably the beginning of the week.
I concur. Tuesdays would be great. We keep doing the timing of this meeting is a great time from my perspective.
This also works for me. Monday mornings do not work for me.
Yeah, Monday's off for me, but Tuesday mornings are good.
Okay, it sounds like there's consensus that Tuesday mornings at 9 a.m. are generally a good time for us, that we'll aim to have regular meetings with the prerogative of not having meetings when there's no agenda, with advanced public notice of that. And of course, filing and putting in the public our agenda within 48 hours notice. Any other conversation? Tuesdays at 9, today we scheduled 3 hours. I don't know if every week, it's going to require as much of a robust time frame, but is this generally a good window to protect?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, do we have a motion to, support this schedule?
I'll move. So move. Tuesday mornings, 9 to 12, as needed.
Okay, do we have a second?
I would
I'll
second.
second.
Okay, Commissioner York seconds. Quick vote, Commissioner Watchman,
Aye.
Commissioner Meal,
Aye.
Commissioner Lerner,
Aye.
Commissioner York.
Aye.
Newberg is a yes. We will plan for Tuesday meetings at 9 needed basis as we move forward. Moving on to item number 13, discussion of future agenda item requests. It looks like we will most likely meet again. We will confirm next Tuesday at this hour. Let's open it up for conversation about agenda item.
Well, Commissioners, my suggestion would be to talk about the executive director and other administrative support position descriptions on the agenda. And then again, I will request that we place a time for public comment on the agenda, or timed, I guess, whatever, so that people know if it begins at 9 o'clock or 9:30 in the morning, so they can plan for that.
Okay.
And I would suggest adding a discussion of the qualifications or of the legal counsel as a separate agenda item.
Yes. I imagine that many of the agenda items today will be continued on. Executive director, legal counsel. Something that is on my mind as a result of the presentations today has to do with our website. I think our website is the point of interaction between us and the community. And so to the extent that we can just update it a little bit, make it a little user-friendly, accessible, that might be an agenda item that we might want to talk about.
I agree with that as an agenda item, and I think if I understood it correctly, we need to approve them moving the website to a government web address. In fact, maybe I should make that as I don't know if I can make that as a motion now since it wasn't on the agenda. So put on the agenda for next week that we can consider approving the government changing the website and moving forward with updating it.
Okay. Noted.
Madam Chair, speaking of the website, I noticed, and I'm still, trying to get used to that, but the social media mediums too. Is that something that the commission ought to consider in addition to the website? A lot of political bodies do communicate through that, meeting notice, very basic, simple things. And so maybe we should put that on the agenda too as another measure to continue to communicate with the public.
Commissioner Watchman, yeah, we can add a conversation on social media and maybe the media in general. My sense is that some of that may well come down to the executive director responsibility. Just with open meeting laws and the idea of us coming up with consensus of a responsible way to handle social media feels a little bit daunting right now, but it is a very important conversation and a powerful tool along with media, and so noted that's an important agenda item. Okay. Is everybody familiar with the process of adding agenda items? Again, just for the public awareness, there's no conversation amongst the 5 commissioners. Our admin will be submitting to you a draft of agenda suggestions. You are to respond to Yasmin directly, and then she will be the one responsible for publishing that agenda with 48 hours notice.
Yes, I'm aware of it.
As a point of question, we had not discussed item 9. We pushed it to the end since we are nearing the end of our meeting, unless we're going to continue and go on, which is fine. Do we want to move that to the next to our meeting next Tuesday if we don't cover it today?
Yes, so we have about 12 minutes left. We need to first finish up this item 13. If we could have a motion just to reiterate consensus of what we feel our top agenda items are. And then after that would be item 9, which is open meeting law and public records training. That's about 5 minutes each. And then there's adjournment. So we have 11 minutes. I defer. Let's first just finish up item 13. Do I have a motion to recommend the items that we suggested for the agenda? Okay, do we have a second? The items being website, executive director, legal, and a continuation, public comments, a continuation of many of the items that we had initially. Do I have a second?
I'll second, Commissioner Watchman.
Okay, quick vote. Commissioner Watchman?
Quick discussion. I'd like to make sure we make that the executive director assistant is also in there.
Yes.
Admin.
Absolutely. Assistant director and admin.
Yeah. Well, not
Staff.
assistant, but I meant staff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Assistant to the director.
Right.
Right.
Deputy.
Is it a deputy or is it an assistant to the director?
That's admin assistant, I think is what we're looking for.
Right.
Okay. Admin. Okay, so do we need to reiterate the motion?
No.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, Commissioner Watchman,
Aye.
Commissioner Meal,
Aye.
Commissioner Lerner,
Aye.
Commissioner York,
Aye.
Newberg is an aye. The motion passes. Okay, moving on to number 9, which was deferred. After this, we have one other item, which is just securing our next meeting date, which we mostly discussed. Do we want to push through with what would probably be about 10 minutes of an overview? You know what, we will likely need more training, which relates to the previous item, which we closed. Open meeting law and public records are 2 extremely important items that I think we collectively really need to be trained on. So we have the option of getting a 5-minute overview per each right now. And in addition, you know, scheduling deeper training. So I think the first question right now for you all is, do you want to dig in and do the 10 minutes or table it?
I'd rather do the 10 minutes now and have it done.
Okay, it sounds, Pam, are you ready to move forward with those overviews?
Can everybody see me or hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. So let me do this fairly briefly. I did ask Yasmin to send out, I believe it was last week, a couple of links that are pretty good resources for both public records and open meetings. The two resources that I personally rely on frequently, one is the Office of the Arizona Ombudsman Citizens Aid. They have a public records and open meeting handbook on their website. It's very handy because it has both the statutes, the case law, and the Attorney General opinions included in it. It's in a booklet form. So it is all condensed and very handy to use. The other good resource is the agency handbook that the Office of the Arizona Attorney General publishes, and you can get that from their website. Both of them provide lots of good resources. I would just point out that the agency handbook has a lot of information in it, not just limited to public records and open meetings. So there are things on public monies, every area that state government touches on, they have some guidance on. So with regard to public records, which is where I'll start, the purpose of public records law is to open government activity to public scrutiny. So that's going to be the overriding thing to keep in mind when you look at public records. There is occasionally a question about records that are being requested for a commercial purpose. For the purposes of public record law, that's not going to make any difference other than what can be charged for those records. So the law itself remains the same when it comes to public records, whether it's for a private purpose, like maybe your neighbor wants to request documents, or whether it's for a public purpose, like a website is looking to gather up information so they can target people for services. Public records are essentially anything that you create or use to conduct your job. So in the sphere of being a commissioner, anything you use to carry out your job duties is going to be a public record, whether that is a map, a report you've received, an email, maybe you take your own notes, anything like that that's used throughout your job is a public record. They all need to be kept, and that includes things such as emails, text messages. If they are used to carry out your duties, then they are a public record and they have to be treated accordingly. So what do we do with the public records request? And I believe one came in actually during the course of this meeting. It is good to have one person who tracks them because it allows you as a commission to make sure something doesn't get missed. And it also allows you to track, what they requested, what went out, when it went out, that sort of thing. One thing agencies do need to keep in mind is that it is their burden to respond promptly. If you get a request that even remotely looks like a public records request, I always recommend my clients take that as a public records request and respond accordingly. Both statute and case law has found that if the public records is not responded to promptly, then that can be considered a denial of the public records request. In terms of responding, though, it may be that the request is something that's going to take you 5 days to produce. You should not wait the 5 days to respond, but instead respond immediately. Let them know if the request has been received, and then as soon as you have the responsive records, they'll be contacted. And the last thing to keep in mind with responding is that you do not need to create a document to respond to the public records request. So if your requester is asking for a list of all commission members and one did not already exist, then you would be under no obligation to create that. But if it exists, then you would be able to turn that over. So the summary with regard to the public records request as it relates to responding is that whether or not a request is prompt is going to depend on the circumstances surrounding that response. So every request is different. So what is prompt is different for every request. Now, with the disclosure of documents in response to a public records request, there is a presumption that everything you do while carrying out your duties is a public record in terms of the documents you create and the work you create, but not everything needs to be disclosed. There are exceptions under the statute. The big categories are confidentiality, privacy, and the best interests of the state. Of those three categories, the strongest one is statutory or case law confidentiality. Following that would be privacy interests, and then the best interests of the state. The best interests of the state defense, though, is not a slam dunk and is not something that should be taken lightly because, again, the legislative intent is to open government activity to public scrutiny. So if this was in court, the court would weigh that and consider strongly, whether or not the best interests of the state really do outweigh the public's interest in getting that information. As far as these public records requests being made, many agencies like to have them done in a certain manner, but that's for convenience of the agency. There's nothing in statute or case law that mandates how a public records request must be made. You can ask a requester to fill out a specific form, but you cannot require it. Finally, keep in mind that if public records requests are challenged by somebody making a request of the IRC, they're going to be doing it by special action in Superior Court. And if the court was to find that the public records request was improperly denied, then the court could impose damages, costs, and attorney's fees. All right, so that is my very abbreviated and quick public records overview. Are there any questions before I move on to open meeting? All right, so with regard to open meeting, again, as I indicated initially with public records, the Ombudsman's office and the AG's office both have materials online that are very helpful and provide good guidance. The legislative purpose of open meeting laws is actually set out in the statutes. The legislature intends the open meeting law to be construed in a manner that maximizes public access to the government process. Any questions or uncertainty about this really should be resolved in favor of openness as it relates to the public meetings. And it is a safe assumption that the open meeting law applies anytime there is a majority of the board together. So if there is a quorum of the board, in this instance, it would be 3 of the 5 members, then you need to assume that at that moment, the open meeting law applies. Open meeting laws have a few requirements. One is that every meeting of the public has to be open to every meeting of the public body, the IRC, has to be open to the public. There needs to be proper notice of the meeting, as well as an agenda posted. And then minutes need to be kept for every meeting, whether it is a general session or executive session. And of course, when we say minutes, I would just like to point out that I'm using it generally on minutes in the open meeting sense can either be written, either as in outline format or an actual transcript, or it can be a recording that accurately catches everything that's gone on. With regard to meetings, generally speaking, they are a gathering of people, meaning the 5 of you or any portion of you, either in person or through technological devices. So as we met today by Google Meets, that would be considered technological device. This is an open meeting. It also can happen in person, obviously. It can be done through cell phone. Whatever the manner is, you just want to make sure that you've considered the open meeting implications and whether or not it's being permitted in that manner to meet, and that the public has been provided the appropriate notice. Key considerations are whether the matters to be discussed might foreseeably require some kind of final or legal action. So if you're going to do anything to go forward, then it needs to be done in an open meeting. One thing I'd just like to caution everybody about is serial communications, or something that we refer to as the hub and spoke effect. A serial communication would be if I was to contact Chair Newberg, then from there I go to Vice Chair Watchman, then from there I go to Commissioner Lerner, then York and Meal. That would be a serial communication. If there's any attempt to move information from one person to the next, that would be a serial communication, and that has to happen in an open meeting. And that would be the same, even coming from the public. So if you get something from the public, you're going to want to make sure that you don't respond to it, or certainly don't respond to everybody when you're considering the matter, and just go ahead and let the administrative assistant or executive director handle it. Hub and spoke would be if somebody goes from one person to the next and passes the information along. So kind of like if you think about a bicycle with the hub and spokes being all the wires that go out, the passing of information where maybe one person says, well, I spoke to Chairman so-and-so and they told me this, what do you think? Then you go to the next one and you say, well, I spoke to Chairman A and Chairman B and they both agreed with whatever. So you want to make sure to avoid that, because that's a violation of open meeting law. If there's no quorum, you cannot have a meeting. So in your statutory provision, which is the Constitution, a quorum is stated as a majority. There are other agencies or boards that might have a different number stated for them, or different calculation of what a quorum is, but for you, it is a majority of the board. Executive sessions are sessions that are excluded from the public, and they are confidential. These are attended only by members of the board or commission and people that are necessary to it. So for this commission, it would include perhaps your administrative assistant or executive director, whoever's providing the information, as well as a secretary or a transcriber, counsel to answer questions of a legal nature. No legal action can take place in executive session. So executive session is solely for the exchange of confidential information. Once you're done, you just exit executive session, and then any legal matters, or I shouldn't put it like that, any desire for legal action, meaning action of the commission to go forward, would have to take place in that open session. Executive sessions also require minutes of some sort. Again, those can either be an outline, transcription, or a recording. Okay, overall decorum for the commission. Keep in mind that everything is out in the public, and so you want to make sure that there's nothing that could be inadvertently misconstrued by members of the public. For that reason, you need to avoid side conversations, whispering, passing notes, texting during the meeting. Well, it could very well be a note from your spouse saying, hey, don't forget to bring home milk. The public, of course, wouldn't know that, so they might construe that as something, less benign than that, and it's just easier to avoid those circumstances. Any information that you have while conducting these meetings need to be left with the meeting and should not be dealt with outside of the meeting. Always want to speak loudly and clearly to make sure that everything can be heard by whoever is taking notes, as well as the public who's listening. Obviously, everybody should be treated with dignity and respect. I don't think that's an issue here. We're all adults. All of you have conducted yourself as one would expect, as polite adults, being respectful of each other. Although there are plenty of examples online where we can see that that does not always happen. And that only serves to take away from what the commission is trying to do and the progress they're trying to make. Obviously, you want to keep in mind while you're in the open meeting, it is an open meeting, as well as any portion of the meeting, and anything that's said is out there and will forever be memorialized on the internet. So you want to make sure it's appropriate before it is uttered. The final thing I would leave you with is open meeting laws are serious. They are investigated by both the Attorney General's office as well as the County Attorney's office. Violations can be reported by anyone at any time. So somebody could conceivably look at past meetings and decide they want to file a complaint about it even 2 years in the future. Obviously, that can hinder investigations following that, but violations do not have a statute that can be filed at any point. And once an investigation has been completed, depending on the circumstances of violations, if any are found, it is possible that the board itself may face consequences or individual members. If individual members were to be found responsible for something, then that violation would fall solely to them and cannot be covered by the board or commission as a whole. So that concludes my presentation. I think I probably went over a couple of minutes. I am happy to answer questions. If you have any, you can also email on an individual basis, if something comes up while you're out and about and you're wondering about something.
And thank you, Pam. That was essential. That was so beneficial, both collectively for us as commissioners and also as an assurance to the public about, what our responsibilities are. We may well have questions as they move forward. I know I do, just the application of this in a day-to-day world. We may come back and revisit this in the interim before we move forward. Any other specific questions of Council Pam today? Okay. Thank you very much, Pam. That was very helpful. And so we are now, I believe, on announcements, item 14, to announce our next meeting date. In respect to our earlier conversation, it sounds like we are meeting Tuesday, February 9th at 9 a.m. Can everybody confirm that? Okay, terrific. And now on item number 15, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Mr. Watchman.
Do I have a second?
Commissioner York, seconds.
Okay, I apologize, but we have to do this whole vote again. Commissioner Watchman.
Aye.
Commissioner Meal.
Aye.
Commissioner Lerner.
Aye.
Commissioner York.
Aye.
And I am an aye. And with that, it was an absolute pleasure to see my colleagues around the table get started with our work. And I really look forward to seeing you all next week.
Thank you.
All right. Be well, everybody.
Thank you. Bye now.
Thanks. Oy vey.